Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Nexus. Today, we are talking about the one who needs no introduction. We will talk about Cad Bane. I hope you like this video. If you haven't yet, check out the rest of the channel. But before you do that, stay tuned for this one because it's going to be a interesting one. We are starting set 3 with a bang. We're seeing so many lists since Boba suspension. But before we jump into that, let me give an introduction to someone who needs no introduction themselves. Ollie, how's it going, bro?
What's up? What's up? Yeah, I'm doing good. And yeah, to bounce off what Emmy's been saying, we're going to be covering some Cad Bane today. Couple different builds. We've each been playing the leader recently. We both think that he's a very good choice going into the new meta, especially the early meta with Boba Ban and Set 3 out. So we're going to give you a couple of different options on what we've been testing and explain why we believe this leader is going to be really strong going into the next couple of tournaments.
Well said. Yeah, as you can see from the title, the thumbnail, we're gonna talk about Cad Tarkintown and Cad Green. Now, we have seen actually since last set Cad Blue being around, but we wanted specifically to focus on these two more mid-rangey lists, I would say. And that's because they're both really good options. But before we dive into that, a bit of a overview of the leader. Who is Cad Bane? Who is the one who needs no introduction? Cad Bane. Actually, Ollie, do you wanna do it yourself? I want to introduce the man himself.
Yeah, of course. So on the front side, Cad Bane, when you play an Underworld card, you can exhaust the leader, and then your opponent chooses one of their units and deals 1 damage to it. So gradual ping damage is always going to be good for removal. He's deploy is on 6 resource. He deploys as a 2/8 with raid 2, and then he's got the same ability on the backside, but instead of dealing 1 damage, he's going to be dealing 2 damage. So giving you even more board control once he flips, and the potential to get 3 damage worth of pings on the actual deploy turn as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting because in a post Boba suspension world, obviously there's more space for 6 cost leaders, in my opinion, which were overshadowed completely by that 5 deploy 4/7 with so many upsides. Now that Boba has been suspended, I think we can start looking at these 6 cost leaders, and Cad Bane, I think, is really shining when we look at the cost, the stats, and the leader effect that you described. Why? Well, that's because the Underworld package itself is super solid. Now, the question is, which route do we take? That villainy cunning package we're going to look at is extremely powerful. So, how do we complement this with command? How do we complement it with aggression? And ultimately, what's the one that you prefer? So, maybe let's start from the Underworld package. And here I just wanted to pick a few cards that are, I wouldn't call them staple. What is great about the meta right now, I think it's very open to interpretation, very open to people finding their own way to express their mid-range approach, in this case, on their decks. So in this case, we're going to look at the Underworld package in particular, and I put kind of like semi in order. There's a few things I want to call out. Some of the cards we know very well. Greedo, very great early play 3/1 that can also give us like 2 damage on the ground when it's defeated. Bazine, that has been quite an MVP last meta and is, I believe, is still gonna be extremely impactful going forward.
Very strong card into control decks, especially.
Yeah, and Boba Fett. the one that is not suspended, that is an Underworld card. You see a Cartel Spacer there. I will mention Cartel Spacer I'm sorry, is actually I should have reverted it because everyone knows what Boba Fett does. Cartel Spacer is a 2-cost, 2/3 space unit. When played, we can exhaust a unit that costs 4 or less if we have another cunning card on the field. But the reason why it's there is actually because is another potential target to use for now there are 2 of them. Like you see it creeping up there and in the lower row that represents our tricks and our event cards. Now
Yeah,
there are
and
2 of them. Yeah.
I think we can take a good second to really appreciate how big of a buff now there are 2 of them is to yellow decks in general, but also to this deck especially. Um, Not only does it let you cheat in cards like Bosk and Zuckus on turn 2, which you can see on the screen there as well, which are huge power plays in themselves and also happen to be Underworld traded. But it's also a trick. So if you're planning to run Jabba, which is another potential option for these Cad Bane decks, again, it's an Underworld traded card as well. But it can also just filter out these now there are 2 of them throughout the game. It gives you more targets to hit off of Jabba, and then Jabba just gives you a bunch of value into these control matchups where you need to draw a couple of extra cards to keep playing the game as well.
Absolutely. So as you said, we'll see there's other tricks as well that we could play. And now there are 2 of them. I think we're gonna see a lot of use for this card. I called out Cartel Spacer because we can't play vehicles with it, but we can use a vehicle as the one unit to target to then cheat out the other unit. So what I'm saying is, if we open turn 1 with a Cartel Spacer, turn 2 we can do now there are 2 of them and choose Cartel Spacer because it's Underworld traded, and being in space is harder to deal with even if you don't have initiative. So I wanted to call that out. As you see, a big bounty hunter package here with the new Cad Bane unit. But let's go into the green. This list is a green 30 HP. And I wanted to propose this kind of mid-range that follows very much the resemblance of a boba green, if you will. We have a couple of noticeable differences to what used to be the boba green, and a special call out on obviously a few cards that we gain. We can talk about it, but one card I will talk about in particular is Relentless Pursuit. And I don't know if you, Ollie, are liking this card, but I'm pretty high on it because we can do some silly stuff. Most of our units are bounty hunters, and paying 3 to capture on a big unit and add a shield, especially when we can do it with our leader, I think it's pretty good. I'm curious to know what you think, though.
Yeah, I think the card is really strong as well, especially into the mess of what is going to be the other people trying to play mid-range decks now with Boba gone. Being able to capture a card and then shield your leader, especially, is extremely strong. But then also, you have a bunch of bounty hunters in the deck. You have potentially Greedo, you have Boba Fett, you have Bosk, Zuckus, Forlom, Cad Bane. There's a lot of strong targets for it. I think it often comes down to figuring out what kind of split you want to run with Relentless Pursuit and Waylay, because they kind of feel a similar sort of thing of temporarily removing a unit that you don't want to deal with. But depending on how the meta shapes up, it might depend on which units you're trying to target. If you're trying to target the higher costed units because you're scared of control, Waylay might be more impactful. But if you're more scared about mid-range or aggro matchups, then Relentless Pursuit, not only temporarily removing a unit, but also granting a shield, is going to be a lot more valuable, I think.
Yeah, Cunning has so many of these tempo options. You can see here the Xanadu Blood is another example. I like to run that with a Carter Spacer because you can, use the Carta Spacer to tap something, and then when, if it's still there, Xanadu Blood comes in, you bounce it, and then you can replay it, tap a whole bunch of units, or you can Xanadu Blood to bounce Sabine, or Xanadu Blood to bounce a damage Underworld that you can replay. The synergies are extremely, extremely powerful. The only Underworld card, the only non-Underworld cards in this deck are the Seven Fleet Defender and Vader, which are essentially just tech choices, if you will. But if we specifically look at the green package, the command package, obviously Vader is still one of the strongest card in the game. Allows us to go and search and play, a Sabine, or a Sabine and a Crumb. But it's just that chunky ambush 5/7 is still so good. And another shout out goes to definitely Mole, being an absolutely absurd card. We can do silly things with Mole. We can, now there are two of them on turn 3, to bring him out. And obviously we can damage another Underworld unit. So we end up with a 7/6 on turn 3. It's really, really silly. And then Ollie, we gain access to the best cards in the world, the best cards in the world,
Yeah,
Resupply
overwhelming
and Overwhelming
barrage.
Barrage. Yeah. What do you think about the what green brings to CAD?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely brings an insane package. We all know the power of green villainy cards, like you mentioned, Vader, Maul, Overwhelming Barrage, Resupply. Super Laser Tech is another option if you want to go more into the ramp. And I think there's definitely room now with Boba being gone to figure out what the next green, yellow, black color combination of deck is going forwards, because we all saw how strong Boba Green was in the last format. So there's probably going to be some build that sort of looks to replace that deck. We don't know whether it's going to be Cad Bane or Django or maybe a Sarge or some combination of yellow leader. But yeah, Cad Bane is definitely looking to be a strong option. Obviously, it's got extra Underworld synergies with cards like Maul, and now there are two of them. So it's already incentivized to play a bunch of cards that synergize with Maul there as well. And yeah, it's just got that gradual chip damage that can set up for an even crazier Overwhelming Barrage in the middle of the game.
Yeah, that's what I like about what green adds to CAD, because as you see, there are not many green cards in the deck. Is mainly all cunning, but these green cards really synergize with the rest of the deck. Obviously, being Underworld traded for Mole and Crumb, uh, essentially synergizing perfectly with CAD, because it can return itself to your hand. So potential like multiple pings, healing, double damaging units is extremely annoying for your opponent to deal with. And obviously that resupply to get ahead of the curve. Deploying CAD on turn 3 is extremely powerful. And Overwhelming Barrage is still one of the best cards in the game, and is getting even better, I would say, with all the potential new token strategies coming out, and the opportunity to be able to kind of like clear the board, if you will. So this is a bit of an overview of the green approach. The link of these lists are going to be in the comments. But now let's move on to the Tarkin list, which is something that you, Ollie, have been practicing more. So I want to ask you why, and how have you found it so far?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, like Emmy said, this is a deck that I've been messing with over the past week or so. And potentially a deck that I look to play in Birmingham next weekend. So if any of you guys are going and you see me playing this deck, then you'll know where it came from. The reason why I've been looking at this deck is, first of all, I don't think I'm a good enough deck builder to build a set 3 deck. but also a big reason is that um, going into the new meta with set 3 just having come out, and I don't think we've had any tournaments yet, um, aggro is going to be everywhere. That tends to be the place with any early meta, but I think especially this time because Boba Fett got banned, and Boba Yellow was kind of the aggro killer because it just had cunning and it had the best deploy turns in the game. So it was just able to completely stomp over decks like Sabine or any space aggro decks or Kylo. Um, it just was able to outtempo them entirely. So with Boba being gone entirely, and also Boba Green was pretty good into aggro as well. So those were like the two linchpins of the format, and they were dominating over aggro. So with those decks being gone and people not really knowing how to replace them quite yet, I think aggro is more than ever going to be present in the format. And I think Cad Red especially has really strong matchups into aggro decks, just because of the fact that you can go turn one player guy, ping with Cad, and then Tarkin Town to kill their unit. And then from there, you're able to really easily control the board because they're playing one unit per action. And you're able to use all of your ambush units to get value trades with Cad pings super easily. So looking at the actual deck build there, you don't actually gain that many red cards from playing Cad Red. There are literally two in the deck. The main thing is Tarkin Town. But the two red cards that you do get are really good. You get Punishing One to help shore up that space there, replacing 7th Fleet Defender, but also being an Underworld traded card and having a pretty relevant ability too. And then Ruthless Raider to help synergize with cards like Sneak Attack, which again is another trick that you get with Jabba. You saw in the green version, Jabba wasn't in the list. I think the red version really needs Jabba because it needs some more forecasts because it doesn't ramp, and it also needs that protection into control because it doesn't have anywhere near as much top end as the green version. But Jabba is able to just give you a massive hand throughout the game once you start bouncing it back with McClunky, and able to give you that longevity into a control deck.
Yeah, I think like Tarkin Town by itself, for the reason you said, it is worth playing it red almost. But then Punishing One, a great space unit for 3. Rootless Raider, I think, is incredible. Is such an amazing card. It's not a unique unit either. And when you
Yeah.
like, if you end up playing 2, it's just game over.
Yeah, against control decks as well, it's outside of the takedown and fell the dragon ranges, so it's a really hard unit for them to kill.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. One last card I want to talk about is Cad Bane unit, which is one of the few set 3 cards. In fact, we have 2 set 3 cards in this deck. We have now there are 2 of them and Cad Bane. So yeah, talk to me about this card. Like, are you liking it? Is it overhyped? What are your thoughts?
I am really loving the Cad Bane unit, and I've been thinking about trying the list out with 3 copies now as well. I think that it really helps finish up the top end, being able to get you a turn later than the Ruthless Raider, still with big bombs to be dropping each time, is really nice. It's really strong in those mid-range matchups, being able to just swing the board into your favor and forcing them to have an answer to the Cad Bane. And then even if they have an answer, you've tapped down their entire board, or at least the threatening the units. So the rest of your board can swing face for just 3 damage. It basically time warps you a turn at least, which is crazy. And then if it's obviously able to stick on the board, then you're able to start swinging 7 and potentially drawing cards. I think sometimes the fact that they can rescue the units when you swing can be a bit annoying. Like if you've captured an Avenger, you don't really want to give it back to them. But the card draw is nice to make up for it, especially, like I say, in those longer games, which I think Cad Red can struggle a bit more into. The card draw can help you make up for that and find
Absolutely.
your
And one
cards
thing
like
you
Vizier.
talked about was the tempo. Like, I totally agree. Like, even if they rescue is tapped, and that is just such a loss in
Yeah.
tempo. I'm also quite high on the card, so I'm glad you're liking it. So yeah,
And
we
you can
talked
now
about
there are 2 of them in.
yeah, for real. Playing it on turn 3 is crazy. Just briefly, we talked about this. So the red package is pretty much the two ships, Tarkin Town, and the reason is because Tarkin Town can give us that initial edge. If we want, obviously, depending on the matchup, we probably wanna like adapt how we use Tarkin Town. And maybe on that topic, we talk about some noticeable matchup. I actually left one in particular out because I think it's like very tough, and that is Han 1 yellow. But I think it's like a tough matchup for any other leader, and I think it's so complicated to go through that I just thought, okay, let's just look at what people have been talking about. Obviously, you talked about Sabine and how with Turkingtown we can get that edge on turn 1 and a kind of like being able to deal with their unit 1 by 1 and get that advantage. We are seeing then a very popular list going around Jungle Fett Red, Tarkin Town as well, Space, and a couple of other variations that are quite interesting. Um, so also Bosk control remains like to me one of the biggest, I think, threats. It has gained a couple of cards from set 3, and it's just overall a great efficient control deck that we need to be careful of. I'll do a quick overview of all of them and then see what you think, Ollie. We have seen heroism decks popping up, Han 2 and Ray both in a blue red configuration, but also I think Yoda is gonna pop up and Quinlan as well. So now with set 3 out, there's so many like options that are viable, especially again with Boba being suspended. Thank you so much, FFG, for letting us play the game. How do we approach, let's say, in general, a aggro matchup? Well, actually, we talked about it. How do we approach a mid-range slash mirror? And how do we approach a more control-y matchup?
So I think with the mid-range matchups, it's all going to be about board control and still being able to use, in the red version at least, being able to use Tarkin Town on turn 1 is still pretty impactful if you get the chance. Because it just means you can do a similar thing to the aggro matchups, deal with the units 1 by 1. And that's where the Cad red list really shines, as being able to almost guarantee you know where the pings are going to be going, which will help reach those breakpoints, especially with your ambush units. So I feel like a lot of the mid-range matchups are going to be about board control. And I feel like the access to the new Cad unit is really what is going to help you with the mid-range matchups. And if you're not running a third copy, it might be worth considering siding a third copy for those matchups as well. Because the board swing that can give you, especially if you already have units out, is massive. And it can be really hard for decks that don't have Fell the Dragon to deal with. I think the control matchups is where it's going to struggle a bit more, and probably where the Cad green list will have a bit more of an edge over the Cad red list, because the Cad green list just has way more top end. Like, it has all of the good 7 drops, right? Whereas the Cad red list, the top end is Ruthless Raider and the Cad Bane unit. I think one thing that the red aspect, or the aggression aspect, does bring in for the Cad red list is the potential to sideboard a card like Pillage, which is really nice into those control matchups to help really lean into the hand control, especially because you can recycle Bazines with McClunkies as well, so you can effectively rip them like a good 12 or 13 cards throughout the game, which is really strong into those control decks, especially when you're using Pillage to 2-for-1 them every time.
Yeah, this card brings so much against control. What green has is Pulp Return against control that can bring back all the top end as well. But yeah, this is kind of like the idea of how it kind of compares to other decks. Obviously, we're still waiting to see how the meta will shape up, but we do believe that Cad is uh, in a great position right now. So yeah, in conclusion, if you're thinking about playing Cad and having a mid-range deck that can, face up, and kind of do well, we believe either Cad Green or Cad Tarkin are great option. We hope you liked the video. Ollie, do you have any final thoughts?
If you're not playing CAD, then you should probably be testing against CAD if you're planning to go to Birmingham, because I
Agreed.
also expect there will be some CAD players there, probably myself included.
Totally. Yeah. And on that note, thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, leave a sub, and leave us a comment. Let us know what you think about CAD. What are you playing right now? And if you have any question. Until next time, this was M and Ollie, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.